Hey, it's Les from Comfortable Shoes Studio, and here's another episode of Art Making, another chat while I draw. In this video, I'm using a photo from Owasau Found Photos. They post really interesting historical photos. I'm not sure exactly where he gets them, but they're really interesting, and I do like drawing from them. Sometimes they're a little grainy and hard to see, but in that case, I just go and do what I usually do and go for the vibes of the photo. And this particular kid was really interesting in terms of dress and his like the time frame. So yeah, I drew this person. So I'm going to use in this image a couple of different fountain pens. I've got my Moonman Mini Pocket with a regular nib put on it. And in its current state, as I'm using it, it does have a tendency to dry out. That could be because I am using it on top of inexpensive watercolor pages. Um, that just really did seem to wreak havoc on this particular fountain pen. It didn't have great flow. I have since taken it apart and cleaned out the feed, and the flow is significantly better. I did also alter the feed a little bit so that I'd have more flow. I like a fountain pen in particular, that writes really wet. Um, for many reasons, but like I draw and I need the pen to really skate over the page. So I want it to write a little more wet. And I am not afraid of altering these things, especially an inexpensive pen like this. This was on the more expensive end of my uh, pens from China, but yeah, anyway. So this has the orange Fire on Fire, the Pen Addict by Robert Oster ink in it. I'm then going to use my Jinhao 75 with a Fude nib with a dusty blue ink in it that's Organic Studio Darwin ink mixed with a bunch of other stuff, because the Darwin ink was pretty dry and now it's pretty wet in this pen. Looks really good too. All right, and then I will use another Jinhao. I think it's the 82 in this, for some of the darks, and I might also have a brush pen towards the end for adding in the deepest darks and darkest areas and getting brushy lines in the hair and whatnot. So it's a little bit about the drawing, and now for the chat while I draw. All right, so I want to talk about showing up and what that looks like and means for me. All right, so showing up generally, I do a lot of reading. I read a lot of romance novels, but I also read a ton of nonfiction stuff about creativity, about the act of making art, about kickstarting your creative life. I read all of the things. I read so much. Um, and without fail, every single book about creativity talks about showing up to your work. And almost without fail, that means for those books, that means making art every day. And I think that's an ideal. That is, in an ideal world, I would show up and I would make art for 25 minutes every single day. And I do that most days. I do. I try to make art for at least 25 minutes every day. And I do that because this is in part my self-care, but I found that sitting down and making art for at least 25 minutes a day really sets my day off right. It's sort of like, I talk about this on my other channel, going for a walk in the morning really does, number one, relax me, but it sets my day off at the right tone. And I think that's hard for a lot of people to like choose something like art to show up for every day. Whether you show up for it in the morning or you show up for it in the evening, where are you showing up for your art? And I also want to say, like, it's important to realize that you're not going to be able necessarily to do this every day. Not everyone has the kind of life where you can stop what you're doing or stop your family for 25 minutes a day and make art. Or even 10 minutes a day. A lot of the art books were like, you could absolutely make art for 10 minutes a day if you really want to. If you really love this thing, you will show up and do it for 25 minutes. And yeah, sure. But when you live a busy life, you're working a busy job, you got kids, you got family, you got people who need you. 10 minutes is a lot of time, right? Like it's a long period of time when you're a caretaker. And you can't always sit down for 25 minutes and do what you're going to do. For some of us, absolutely, sure. Like I am able to do this most mornings, but the reality of it is there are a few mornings out of the month, every month, where I can't. I sit down, and instead of making art, I record one of these videos. And I see my videos as creative work. So it's not creative, if that makes sense. But I do show up for these often. And I see these as part of my creative process. And I think that's the other aspect for many of us. When you are doing creative work, what does your creative work entail? What does your creative work need for you to make it on the regular? And for me, like part of my creative work is this process of making these videos. It's also about doing research. I'm deep in research mode for finding a host for things that I'm thinking about doing. I keep talking about the workshops. Where am I going to host those? Am I going to do Patreon? Because unfortunately, Ko-fi isn't expandable to that, and that's a bit of a bummer. I really want a community aspect, and Ko-fi doesn't do that particularly well. So I'm thinking about switching providers for my support group. And so I'm thinking about all of that. That's part of my creative process, is like where I'm going to put all this stuff. Part of my creative process is also writing. It's writing blog posts, it's writing posts for Ko-fi, it's writing a loose outline for what I'm going to say during some of these videos. If I'm doing a to-do video, then it's very much more or a how-to video, not a to-do, a how-to video, then it's much more detailed in terms of an outline and a script. It's more than just like the beats that I record or write down for this. And so I think that's all my creative work, and I show up for that, like I said, most mornings. Some mornings I oversleep and I have to rush out of the house. So yeah, I don't think being admonished to do something every day is always the most helpful thing for folks. So I'm not here to admonish people, like say, yes, absolutely, you should make art every day. I mean, in an ideal world, if you can, absolutely. But if you can't, then no shame. Like there's no harm in that. And show up when you can. And I think that's really always my takeaway from any of these things that I read, is that set myself a goal, but then also realize like the people whose books I'm reading have a very different life. There's a definite amount of privilege when you read some of these books, and I also know that they've been edited for readability and potentially for other things as well. So like I'm always thinking about those sorts of things as I read all these books about creativity. Is like, where is this person in their life? How are they able to like do these things? And sometimes they have a spouse that makes six figures, and I don't make six figures, and neither does my partner. So yeah, anyway, making art, try and do it every day if you can. I do think making art every day is really beneficial, and doing it as often as I can is something that I do. So anyway, I think that you should be in the same boat. Try and make art every day. If you can't, no harm. And make it as often as you can when you can. Anyway, with that, I'm going to say thank you for being here. I really appreciate you watching my videos and supporting me with likes and thumbs up and all of that fun stuff. I do appreciate it. I appreciate all of the comments. So like and subscribe and all of that fun stuff. Leave a comment. And if you really like my video, head over to my Ko-fi account. It's ko-fi.com/Harper. and buy me a coffee so that I can continue to make these videos and buy supplies to do review videos and all of that fun stuff. Um, anyway, I really appreciate you being here. Thanks and goodbye.